Welcome back to the Sage Audio channel. Today we'll be discussing our pick for the top 5 advanced mixing techniques. We'll be covering some ways to better route your mix and some ways you can use processing to affect your mix in unique and useful ways, as well as listening to these effects in practice. But before we get into the video, if you're an artist, engineer, or a producer and you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us at sageaudio.com. We'll master it for you and send you a free mastered sample of it. All you gotta do is set up the short account, upload the song, and we can do the rest. Number 1, record an effect using a MIDI environment. So I admit that this first one isn't technically a mixing technique, but it does heavily affect mixing and can greatly improve your mixes if you're working in a digital workstation. Also, it does include processing that would occur during the mixing stage, so we might as well cover it. Now, this particular technique is great for any engineer that's working on a computer that can't handle a significant amount of processing. Maybe you're working on a laptop or an older computer or both, and you're running into constant errors, freezing, or crashing during your mixing session. If so, this technique is a great way to use all of the effects that you want without clogging up your computer's processing power. In short, you can use a certain section of your DAW, if you are using Logic Pro X, known as the MIDI environment, to record processing like EQ, and compression, reverb, or whatever you'd like to directly onto your recorded signal. Now first, you'll need to enable the Advanced Tools setting. So to do this, click Logic Pro in the application menu bar, then scroll over Preferences, find Advanced Tools, and then select it. And step 2 is to enable Show Advanced Tools. You should now be able to access your MIDI environment and perform this technique. To find this MIDI environment and perform the technique, you got to follow these steps. Step 1, use the application bar menu at the top of your screen, find the section titled Window, scroll down and click on Open MIDI Environment. Now, alternatively, you can just press Command 0. Now with your MIDI environment open, you should see what looks a lot like your mixer. This includes your tracks, your outputs, your click tracks, and any other track that you've created. So from here, you need to create a new input track. Step 2, to create this input track, you click New above your MIDI environment mixer, and you scroll down until you see Channel Strip. From there, you select Input. Now this will create an input channel that routing-wise is between your track and your incoming signal. Step 3, insert a plugin on your new input channel strip. You can now record your incoming signal with this processing included, meaning that when you play back your recorded signal, this effect will be included. Now, one of the best ways to use this technique is to use processing that you know you'll need, but you won't want to alter. So 3 forms of processing that you may want to record is some analog emulation and harmonic generation, maybe a high-pass filter for most instruments and vocals, and some mild compression to balance your dynamics. Perhaps the best choice is to use a channel strip plugin, which will probably include all 3 of these forms of processing. Number 2, use inverse equalization to clear space in a mix. Now this technique is one of my personal favorites, as the effects are not only easy to achieve, but 9 times out of 10, they greatly improve your mix clarity. Essentially, the effect works by matching the frequency response of 2 similar instruments or instrument groups, and then inverting the new frequency curve to create the opposite of matching. In turn, everything that was similar about the 2 tracks is attenuated, and everything that sets them apart is amplified. Now let's look at how to do this in a step-by-step process. Step 1, after picking the 2 tracks that you'd like to separate, insert an EQ plugin capable of EQ matching on one of them. For this example, we're going to be using the FabFilter Pro Q3, which is a great option for this technique if you'd like to perform it. Step 2, enable the EQ match function by clicking EQ match, and then change the sidechain to the other track that you picked out. So for example, if you're trying to separate your vocal and guitar, and you inserted the EQ plugin on the vocal track, then your sidechain input would be the guitar track. Step 3, set your reference as your sidechain, and then play your track. The EQ matching should automatically begin to take place, and after an appropriate amount of time, you can stop playing the signal and click Match. Step 4, the FabFilter Pro Q3 will create multiple bands and filters to match the frequency response of the signal with that of the sidechain signal. But this isn't what we want. Because we want these 2 tracks to sound opposite to one another and not identical, we'll need to highlight all the created bands and use the gain rotary to invert them. So step 5, some of the bands that were created will most likely be pretty extreme, too much so for our purposes here. So what we want to do is when we invert the created bands, it's best to make sure that the inversion is only about 3 to 5 dB. Now you can make this effect as extreme as you want, however, it is best to keep the gain changes pretty mild if you want it to sound natural in any way. Let's listen to an A-B comparison of this effect.
Dreams are not the same for me. Standing by the shore while you're on the open sea. Cannot take this anymore. The dreams are not the same for me.
Number 3. Introduce plugin automation to create varied effects. Now, one of the biggest grievances that I have with a fair deal of mixes is that the processing stays the same throughout the entirety of the song. Now, when it comes to things like compression or EQ, this is totally understandable, but if a vocal or guitar has the same delay, reverb, or saturation on it throughout the entire track, I usually find myself becoming bored with the mix pretty quickly. But fortunately, plugin automation is an easy way to remedy this, as it allows us to quickly write and program in changes to the functions of various plugin parameters, in turn making that processing variable and unexpected. So if you want to accomplish this, here's the process. Step 1, enable automation. Step 2, click on the Automation Type tab and find the plugin that you want to automate. Step 3, find the parameter that you want to affect and select it. And then step 4, on your track, create your automation points. Now once you've created your automation, listen to it and review the effect to ensure that it's what you want. Now if manually entering in automation data isn't your favorite thing to do, or you find it to be too time consuming, you can also use the latch function to write this automation data. Simply switch the automation type on your track from read to latch. Now with the track playing, alter the function that you want to automate. This will create automation data specific to that function. Now let's listen to a A-B comparison of this effect to see what plugin automation can do to a mix.
Standing by the shore while you're on the open sea. Cannot take this anymore. The dreams are not the same for me.
Number 4, use kick and bass ducking to separate the two. Using compression for ducking has been a popular effect for decades. Simply put, ducking allows you to trigger a compressor via another signal. Now let's look at this process step by step. Step 1, insert a compressor on your kick or bass track. This compressor will need to have sidechain functionality. Step 2, alter the sidechain setting. So if you put your compressor on your kick, you should now sidechain the bass, or if you put your compressor on your bass, you should sidechain the kick. Step 3, on the plugin that we're using, we need to accomplish one extra step, which is to set the sidechain setting to external. Depending on the plugin that you're using, this may or may not be needed. Step 4, slowly change your threshold, your ratio, and any other setting that you want to affect. You'll notice that the compressor isn't triggered by the signal of the instrument on which it's inserted, but instead by the sidechain signal. So if you inserted your compressor on your bass track and sidechain the kick drum, then the bass signal will be attenuated whenever the kick is hit. Let's take a listen to this. Number 5, use groups or auxiliary sends to organize your session. Using groups or sends to organize your mixes is one of the best ways to control your mix and to affect it in a professional and time-efficient manner. Now, although many engineers like to use groups, I personally enjoy creating stereo auxiliary tracks to group my instruments, but let's cover both techniques. Now, if you'd like to organize your sessions with groups, it's as easy as selecting the group tab on your channel strip, creating a group, and then adding similar instruments to that group. From there, you can choose what collective processing that group will entail. For example, you can make it so that group's volume is collectively controlled, or maybe its pan is collectively controlled, and so on. Now, this technique is great, however, you may notice that it slows you down if you want to affect one channel in a group individually, since you'll need to deactivate the track from that group, make the change, and then put the track back in that group. Instead, I like to create auxiliary sends for each selection of instruments and then solo those auxiliary sends. So let's look at how to do this step by step. Step 1, highlight all the instruments that you'd like to group together and send them all to the same bus or auxiliary track. Set the send to unity for each of these buses. Now, if done right, the auxiliary track will have the same volume and effects as all of these instruments put together. Step 2, follow the same process for each group of instruments. For example, you could send all of your synth tracks to one send and all of your drum tracks to another send, and so on. Step 3, once all of your instrument groups have been sent to their respective auxiliary tracks, you can solo these auxiliary tracks and have your full mix play from these tracks. Now, essentially what you've done here is you're funneling all of the individual tracks through these auxiliary tracks, which in turn get funneled into your primary stereo output. By soloing your auxiliary tracks, you can easily control the overall volume of your group via the auxiliary tracks channel fader, or you can add any processing to the entire group of instruments via this auxiliary channel's inserts. You can also control the pan, and so on. Additionally, you can still affect the individual tracks that make up the auxiliary tracks. You can control any aspect of them and hear these changes in their relative auxiliary channel, or you can simply solo the individual channel if you'd like to hear the changes. Now, perhaps the most convenient aspect of this routing is that you can create stems from your mix in an incredibly easy way. Simply solo the auxiliary track that you want to create a stem of and export it. So, these are our picks for the top 5 advanced mixing techniques. But what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, if you're an artist or an engineer, send us one of your mixes at sageaudio.com. We'll master it for you and send you a free mastered sample. All you gotta do is set up this short account, upload the song, and we can do the rest. But thank you so much for watching. We really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and share this video with your friends. This way we know if you'd like to see more videos like this one. Also, you can subscribe to the channel. We release new videos every week, and subscribing is the best way to stay up to date. There's a comment section where you can leave your thoughts on this video or a suggestion for a future video. And again, if you're an artist or an engineer and you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us at sageaudio.com. We'll master it for you and send you a free mastered sample. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.